We are operating in an environment where enterprise technology vendors constantly promise seamless digital transformation, autonomous systems, and unprecedented efficiency. But the reality on the operational floor is an entirely different story. Today, we are conducting a rigorous executive autopsy of past integration failures, translating those stark findings into a highly structured strategic blueprint. The deployment of advanced systems, particularly as we move from rigid legacy platforms to autonomous AI ecosystems, requires an authoritative, unhurried governance model. You cannot simply purchase innovation. We have to architect the human and procedural frameworks that allow innovation to function without destabilizing the core enterprise. We must forcefully strip away the marketing hype and confront the absolute structural realities of tech implementation.
71%. That is the sheer scale of systemic friction we are looking at. 71% of enterprise resource planning projects run behind schedule. Internalize that figure for a moment. When an initiative of this magnitude misses its targets by such a wide margin, you are no longer looking at a technical failure. You are observing a severe human and organizational breakdown. The technology itself usually functions exactly as it was coded to function. The delay stems entirely from a failure to anticipate the friction generated when standardized software collides with deeply entrenched human habits and highly customized legacy workflows. Organizations routinely underestimate the sheer cognitive and administrative load placed on their workforce during these transitions. When 71% of projects lag, it clearly indicates that our project management timelines are systematically ignoring the human capacity for adaptation.
That ignored human capacity leads to an exact, measurable consequence. Look at this catastrophic drop. Back in 2016, 74% of employees were willing to support organizational change. By 2023, that metric collapsed to just 41%. This isn't just an interesting data point. It is a severe symptom of chronic change fatigue and the relentless pace of digital disruption. The transition to cloud-enabled architectures meant that instead of facing a single massive upgrade once a decade, your workforce was subjected to continuous, overlapping software releases. Humans require cognitive processing time and psychological safety to transition away from legacy habits. When you force continuous technological change without adequate recovery periods or structural support, you don't achieve agility. You achieve organizational exhaustion. This 33% drop represents a massive depletion of psychological capital, which is the exact fuel required to power our upcoming transition to agentic AI.
Section 1. Detailed operational postmortem. Let's move firmly into the diagnostic phase.
15%. Moving data represents 15% of total enterprise resource planning costs. This financial reality cements Phase A stability as an absolute necessity. You simply cannot build advanced analytics or deploy AI agents on top of fragmented, duplicated, or corrupted data structures. Securing baseline core integrity is mandatory before any downstream optimizations can even be considered. This means executing flawless data migration. It means ensuring perfectly clean financial ledgers. It means securing absolute inventory validation. If your foundational data is compromised, your multi-million-dollar software investment will simply process bad information at a much higher velocity. Executives must mandate a complete operational lockdown of Phase A requirements, treating data quality not as an IT administrative task, but as a critical business continuity metric.
We must issue a sharp warning against what we call framework fetishism. This is the dangerous trap where leaders mistake the methodology for the actual operational outcome. A framework is simply a tool used to structure a transformation. It is not the solution itself. It happens all the time when organizations proudly declare they are rolling out Agile instead of actually fixing their broken claims processing or supply chain logistics. They fall entirely into bureaucratic paralysis. The framework becomes the absolute goal, and any evidence that contradicts the framework is swiftly dismissed. If the theoretical model dictates that employees should have reached rational insight, but your workforce is actually hostile and confused on the floor, framework fetishists will ignore the reality just to protect the methodology. We must retain the executive flexibility to diagnose the actual operational state, rather than forcing the enterprise into a rigid theoretical box.
This forces us to confront a massive shift in bottlenecks between two distinct technological eras. In the monolithic era, we dealt with highly integrated, on-premises databases that required multi-year rollout sequences. The human role was strictly that of a transactional data specialist, manually entering parameters. But the agentic AI era completely shatters this model. We are now dealing with headless, composable agentic systems operating with real-time, autonomous configuration. The AI agents negotiate and execute workflows entirely independently. Consequently, the workforce role must elevate from transactional specialist to algorithmic supervisor. The primary friction point has shifted from aligning social structures with mechanical task flows to balancing rapid technical velocity with human governance. If you try to evaluate an agentic AI rollout using the outdated metrics of a monolithic era, your transformation will fail before it even begins.
Section 2. The Human Blueprint. We'll now look at the core adoption constraints.
Let's rigorously deconstruct Prashi's 8-car milestones. Think of each step here as a mandatory operational gate. You cannot just skip ahead because a vendor promised you speed. Awareness means understanding exactly why a legacy system is dying. Desire is the personal, intrinsic decision by the employee to actively support the change. Knowledge represents acquiring the operational understanding of the new system. Ability translates that theoretical knowledge into actual independent proficiency on the job. Finally, reinforcement sustains the change over time, preventing a regression back to legacy habits. If you skip any of these gates, the entire adoption sequence collapses. You cannot train an employee who lacks the fundamental desire to change, and you absolutely cannot expect operational ability without providing the foundational knowledge first.
This isolates the exact point of failure for modern rollouts. The specific trap most AI initiatives fall into is the massive gap between knowledge and ability. Training completion just means an employee sat in a chair and received information. It completely fails to guarantee independent, real-world application within critical workflows. You can easily achieve a 100% completion rate on your learning management system while simultaneously suffering a 0% adoption rate on the factory floor. Bridging this gap requires hands-on mentoring, the targeted removal of daily operational barriers, and the psychological safety to make errors during the initial application phase. Measuring knowledge is merely an administrative metric. Measuring ability is an absolute operational mandate.
To actually bridge that gap to true ability, we rely on Enid Mumford's 5 dimensions of job satisfaction. This is not HR fluff. It is a stark quantitative analysis of the socio-technical needs of your workforce. Knowledge requires using existing skills while learning new ones. Psychological needs demand recognition and a meaningful sense of advancement. Task needs involve genuine autonomy and variety. Support and control require appropriate tools. Ethical needs mandate transparent communication. When you deploy a system that de-skills an employee or routes every single decision through a rigid workflow that removes their judgment, you destroy their identity capital. Violating these socio-technical needs guarantees absolute change resistance. You must deliberately design workflows that protect and elevate the human supervisor.
Section 3. Chronological Action Plan and Guardrails.
We ground this temporal deployment sequence in Kurt Lewin's foundational model, translating his concepts into rigid structural mandates for the AI transition. Month 1 requires unfreezing. You have to actively destabilize the existing equilibrium and create urgency to break deeply ingrained habits. Month 3 represents the moving phase. The actual transition to the new state occurs here, requiring maximum support and error tolerance. Month 6 is the freezing phase, where you stabilize and reinforce the new operational baseline. This timeline is critical. While AI moves in milliseconds, human organizations operate in months. You must tightly map your technical deployment to this psychological timeline, ensuring that you do not force the enterprise into the moving phase before the unfreezing process is completely verified.
Process before platform. This is your absolute directive. Automating broken workflows simply scales your inefficiencies. If you deploy an autonomous agent into a department completely riddled with corrupted data, undocumented shadow processes, and conflicting business rules, the AI will just execute those massive errors at light speed. You must demand complete core stability and process optimization before deploying AI agents. Technology changes must always begin with process changes. The software is merely an amplifier of your existing organizational design. Ensure your structural design is absolutely flawless before you choose to amplify it.
This leads us to the ultimate executive guardrail, which is the Agent Development Lifecycle, or ADLC. Think of this as a platform-native governance framework. It enforces strict data boundaries, ensuring that agents automatically inherit the platform-level roles and permissions of the active user. This prevents the unchecked expansion of AI sprawl, where rogue agents access highly unauthorized information. The ADLC maintains centralized oversight through portfolio consoles, tracking per-agent telemetry and financial returns in real time. It embeds change management directly into the software lifecycle. You are treating the deployment of non-human actors with the exact same rigor and executive oversight as the onboarding of human employees.
We now mandate the financial reality of this transition. For every $1 spent on AI licensing or technical development, $3 must be forcefully reallocated toward change management and workforce upskilling. AI-native tools compress technical design and configuration timelines massively. The bulk of your budget can no longer go to implementation partners setting up servers. That budget must pivot entirely to human-centric change management. You are transitioning your entire workforce from transactional operators to strategic supervisors. That requires deep domain expertise, AI fluency, and analytical governance training. Underfunding this 3-to-1 ratio guarantees that you will possess advanced technology that your organization is entirely incapable of wielding.
We conclude this explainer with a heavy, lingering challenge for every leader navigating this landscape. Look closely at your organization. Are your people actually prepared to supervise these algorithms, or are you simply automating your existing operational failures? Your genuine capacity to lead humans through the most volatile technological shift in history depends entirely on your answer to that question. If your team is not genuinely involved in designing how they work alongside these systems, you are not transforming the enterprise. You are merely forcing disruption upon them. Demand process integrity. Aggressively protect the psychological capital of your workforce and govern your architecture with uncompromising discipline.